Hello, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Dr. Eric Verellen, and I am a naturopathic doctor. And today we are talking about toxemia as a cause of disease. Naturopath's philosophy includes the concept that disease is due to an accumulation of toxins. Although most authorities will not agree with them, these are essentially the cause of disease from a naturopathic perspective. So we have Dr. Cordingley's take on the cause of disease. Naturopathy is a system of disease eradication based on the theory that clean blood is the instrument of health and the foundation of happiness, or, as the Bible states it, the life of all flesh is the blood thereof. Whatever the systems we employ, we produce results only as we purify the blood and clear the system of poisonous encumbrances. For centuries, mankind has been searching for the cause of disease. Not content with the taking of the biblical statement and deducting therefrom, pathologists have advanced one theory after another, only to see each give way and weaken. At present, medical doctors are almost universally working on the germ theory of disease, as is due for being thrown aside. Dr. Fraser of Canada and Dr. Powell of California have experimented with billions of germs of all varieties, but they have been unable to produce a single disease by introduction of germs into human subjects. Dr. Wattie tried for years to provide the germ theory, but he could not do so. During the World War, an experiment was conducted at Gallops Island, Massachusetts, in which millions of influenza germs were injected into over 100 men at the government hospital. But instead of the men taking influenza, the only change in them was increased appetite and more vigorous health. Dr. Fraser found in many cases of diphtheria and other diseases, the germs did not appear at the outset of disease, and in some patients, the germs did not make their appearance at all. What then is the purpose of germs? Germs are scavengers. When you see flies swarming around a garbage can, you don't say that the flies brought the garbage, but that the garbage attracted the flies. The case is the same with germs. The germination of poisonous acids and alkaloids in the human system attracts germs because they feed upon it. The nature of the toxin and its localization determine the character of the disease. When an epidemic breaks out, there has been a considerable number of people in a locality who have eaten the same kind of food, lived under similar conditions, been subject to the same climatic and atmospheric changes, and these factors have brought about an identical fermentation of toxins in the bodies of such persons and manifested the same group of symptoms. That is why we have epidemics. Let us briefly deal with the other theory of the cause of disease, one that has attracted rather wide attention. That is the theory that subluxations at the spine cause disease. These subluxations cause the bones to impinge the nerves, so say those who advocate this theory. However, we have found by dissection that the nerve where it passes through the opening between the vertebrae is from 1/3 to 1/12 the size of the opening, that it is surrounded by a Vaseline-like fatty tissue, and that no pressure could be possibly at that point, even if the disc between the vertebrae were reduced to nothing. Why, then, do we sometimes have tenderness and contraction at a spinal segment? Simply because the morbid matter that has localized in an organ or tissue has set up an irritation there, and its irritation is transmitted along the nerve to the related spinal area, and it there produces a condition of contraction and hyperesthesia. When the vertebrae is adjusted and stretching of ligamentous and muscular tissue results and increases irritation is produced, which is transmitted back to the organ or tissue affected, where it in turn brings about a marked stimulation, which sometimes causes the organ or tissue to throw off its original irritant. We see a parallel to this in cases of sick stomach. If a person eats something which slightly sours in the stomach, it will make him feel upset. But if it sours greatly, he will immediately vomit it up and then feel better. This demonstrates why it is that so-called straight chiropractors sometimes accomplish results, and it will also indicate the reason why they so often fail. To get back to our real cause of disease, we find that fullness of life means absolute freedom from disease. Disease in any form causes a limitation of life. Therefore, when disease is present, there is some change in the blood, because the life of all flesh is the blood thereof. I want to pause for a moment, and I want to change your guys' perspective on the word disease. We all hear it disease, but I want to change it. I want it to change your perspective on hearing it as dis-ease, being no longer at ease. When you're at ease, you're feeling great, you're feeling wonderful, nothing's wrong. But in a state of dis-ease, you are no longer in a state of ease. Therefore, something is not right. Naturopathic researchers have shown that wrong habits of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation increases the intake of poisonous acids and alkaloids, and at the same time, so weaken the eliminative functions that these toxins are not thrown off. They therefore float in the bloodstream and eventually are deposited in some organ or tissue, causing disease to develop. Dr. Cummins shows that arteriosclerosis, rheumatism, and calculi are caused by accumulations of uric and oxalic acids in the blood. Bright's disease, dropsy, ulcers, and necrosis are brought about through the accumulation of uric and sulfuric acids. When carbonic acid combines with uric acid in the blood, cell asphyxiation is brought about, causing anemia, tuberculosis, chlorosis, and pneumonia. And similarly, all other diseases have their origin. Isn't it remarkable that men should experiment and theorize for so many centuries in an effort to find the cause of disease, and then, after all his labors, should be brought back to the sacred world revealed by God? We will move on now to the value of symptomology. Sir James was probably the greatest clinician of the English-speaking world. Yet he had not outlived the medical superstition that disease is a positive entity, and that the way to find disease is to trace symptoms to their source. But if a symptom is traced to its source, what of it? A pain is traced to its source, and we find that it comes from the head, but the head does not cause the pain. Then we find that there are symptoms of hyperemia, too much blood in the head. The pressure from too much blood in the head causes pain. Then pressure must be the disease. No. Then too much blood is the disease. Hyperemia? Certainly too much blood in the head was a cause. But what caused the congestion? We find that pain is a symptom. Pressure causes pain. Pressure too is a symptom. Too much blood in the head causes pressure. Too much blood in the head is also a symptom. Pain, pressure, and hyperemia are all three symptoms. In time, the walls of the blood vessels weaken and the pressure ruptures one of the vessels. Hemorrhage into the brain causes death from apoplexy. Is the ruptured blood vessel the disease? No, it is only a symptom. Is death from hemorrhage the disease? If the hemorrhage is not severe enough to cause death but does produce some form of paralysis, is paralysis a disease? Haven't we been traveling along quite a chain of symptoms in the journey from the headache to paralysis? Yet we have not found anything to which all these symptoms point as disease. And according to the requirements of Sir James Mackenzie, disease is made manifest to us only through symptoms. Here we have a chain of symptoms beginning with pain and ending in hemorrhage and death or paralysis, without having discovered any indication as to the true cause. Nor will any other symptom chain, such as stomach symptoms ending in pyloric cancer, give any more indication of the disease at its various stages than did the foregoing illustration. The first indication which we have any chain of symptoms is discomfort or pain. In any stomach derangement, we have pain, more or less aggravated by food. Catarrh follows or, more often, precedes it. Or there may be that which we call inflammation or gastritis. Gastritis continues with a thickening of the mucous membrane. A time comes when there is ulceration. This will be called a disease and is recognized as an ulcer of the stomach. But actually, it's only a continuation of the primary symptoms of catarrh and pain. The ulcer is removed, but the symptoms of inflammation and pain continue. Other ulcers will follow. This state eventually emerges into induration, or hardening of the pyloric orifice of the stomach. When this develops, there is more or less of an obstruction to the pyloric valve outlet, which, in turn, produces occasional vomiting. Then, on through examination, cancer is found. When we analyze the symptoms from the first pain and catarrh in the stomach to the final denouements, cancer, we again encounter just another chain of symptoms. The first symptom to be noticed is pain. On examination, we find catarrhal conditions of the stomach. But this catarrhal condition is not a disease. It is only a symptom. Catarrhal inflammation continues with the thickening of the mucous membrane leading to ulceration. Nor is ulceration a disease, only a continuation of the inflammatory symptom. Removal of the ulcer does not cure the disease, it only removes the symptom. These symptoms continue until there is thickening and induration of the pylorus, which is called cancer. But we really have not discovered anything which approaches the true cause merely of chain of symptoms from beginning to end. By removing the cancer, the question of what the disease is has not been answered. Since cancer is the end symptom, it cannot be the cause of the first symptom. Any other so-called disease can be illustrated in the same manner. Pain and catarrh, as a rule, are the first symptoms which call a physician's or patient's attention that something is wrong. Yet, as we have seen, pain and catarrh are not the disease. And when the cause of the pain is discovered, this too proves nearly another symptom, not the disease. The pattern follows true in all cases. It is no wonder that diagnosticians become perplexed in their search after disease, for they have confused symptoms and disease. The fact of the matter is, it is impossible on any ending of a chain of symptoms to say, this is the disease. We have shown that headache or pain in the head is not a disease. We likewise painted out that hemorrhage or apoplexy is not a disease, but only a continuation of the primary symptoms. Mackenzie had said, disease is made manifest to us only by the symptoms which it produces. This statement tactically infers that there are diseases and symptoms, and that through symptoms we may find disease. But when we trace symptoms to disease, we are in the dilemma of the mountain climber who climbs one mountain only to find there are other and higher peaks, on and on and on. That Mackenzie was baffled in his search for fixed disease is indicated by the following. Many diseases are considered to be of a dangerous nature, and many attempts are made to combat the danger, with, however, no perception of its nature. This is particularly true with epidemic diseases such as measles, influenza, scarlet fever, and diphtheria. As a consequence, proposals have at different times been put forward to treat individuals who suffer from these diseases upon some general plan, without consideration of the peculiarities of the individual case, and thus we get that rule of thumb treatment, which is shown in the indiscriminate use of serum or vaccine. During influenza epidemics, there is always a cry for a universal method of treatment, and attempts are made to meet this cry in the shape of so-called specifics and vaccines. When a great authority declares that dangerous diseases are combated without any perception of their nature, and that too, in spite of the germ theory, it should be obvious to thinking minds that the germ theory has been tried and found wanting. Yet when something must be done and nothing better has been discovered, he suggests serums and vaccines may be used indiscriminately. Medicine rests upon a sound scientific foundation. Anatomy, physiology, biology, chemistry, and all collateral sciences which have a bearing on the science of man have been advanced to great perfection. But the so-called sciences of symptomology, disease, diagnosis, etiology, and the treatment of disease go back to superstition for their foundation. We see the incongruity of jumbling real science with delusion and superstition. Disease is believed to be an entity, And this idea is followed by another equally absurd, namely the idea of cure. Around these two old assumptions has developed an immense literature which confound its creators. There is no cure. Amelioration merely increases the toxemia and builds the so-called disease. A woman who suffered from migraine headaches for 22 years went to 22 different physicians and a neurologist. Most of them told her that there was no cure, but that with menopause the headaches would cease. Her suffering had increased since her menstruation had ceased. We do know that drug palpitation is always inclined to enervate and to build toxemia. She had further been treated by morphine hypodermics. The naturopath that the woman saw recommended that no more smoking was to be allowed in the home. She was also to stay in bed and fast until one of the periodic paroxysms of the headache had been missed, with her paroxysms coming weekly, beginning on Tuesday and leaving her prostrate until Friday. She had only one paroxysm under her naturopath's care. The smoking in her home and the use of the prescribed drugs were causing her unnecessary suffering. Drugging pain of any kind checks elimination that prevents the human organism from cleaning house. The naturopathic recommendations reversed the order. All eliminating doors were opened, and the result was that she never had another headache. Changes were also recommended in her eating and other habits afterwards. People who have no bad habits are never sick. So, if doping is ameliorating, then the dictionary definition of ameliorating should be changed to toxifying. So pretty much what's being said here with this last part is that when you are suffering with some sort of symptom, you're dealing with a disease and the disease is causing symptoms, you go to your doctor for those symptoms because that's what you're feeling at that time. And the doctor prescribes you a medication that only covers the symptoms. So what you're doing is you're ameliorating those symptoms, ameliorating meaning that you feel better after taking, the medication because it gets rid of those symptoms. But also with getting rid of those symptoms, you're taking in a synthetic material that's poisoning or toxifying your body, which then causes the disease to just fester more and more. So because there is so much information on toxemia as a cause of disease, I'm going to split this video into 2 parts. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to see more videos on natural health, go ahead and hit the follow button. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, stay healthy, everyone.